Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, with episode number 165 of the Yakking Show. That's right, we're creeping towards the magical 200. And this is the show that opens you to new perspectives for the changing world we're living in. And it's certainly changing as we talk right now. As always, we have interesting guests. And on the somewhat gloomy Ontario day, let me welcome co-host Kathleen, and hope it's a little sunnier, maybe a few miles down the road where you are. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you so very much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you, and we love reading your comments, so do please keep those coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And as Peter mentioned, we have another special guest with us today. His name is Karl Toews. Welcome to the show, Karl. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Kathleen, and thank you for pronouncing my last name correctly. Most people don't.
Well,
Welcome,
Karl, just a brief introduction here. You are a lawyer and an Oxford County candidate here in Ontario for the Ontario Party for the provincial elections coming up in June. For our audience, can you give us a little bit about your background and what made you decide to go into politics?
Sure. Well, I was raised in a very musical family in Brandon, Manitoba, which is actually a very musical town. Most people think it's a hockey place, an agricultural place. It certainly is, but it actually has an excellent music school. And yeah, I was a cellist for a long time. I ended up working for 3 years in Norway. I was in the orchestra in Bergen there. After 3 years in Norway, I decided I wanted to come home to Canada. I knew a number of musicians in Toronto. I freelanced in Toronto for about 9-10 years. I played with the Toronto Symphony quite a bit, Canadian Opera Company. And then my wife and we adopted 2 boys from Ukraine, actually. 2008 into 2009, the adoption was happening. Eastern Ukraine, near the city of Donetsk, actually, was where the boys' orphanage was. My wife's Ukrainian descent, so it made sense for us to adopt from Ukraine. And my wife's actually a professional violinist. She plays in the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony. And we kind of decided one of us should get a real job with the 2 boys on the way. So I decided I'd take a crack at law school, and I was fortunate enough to be admitted to the law school at the University of Toronto. I started there, and I'll tell you, I actually, just the way things worked out, the adoption happened during first year law school. So I had to travel to Ukraine a couple times during first year law school, but my classmates were great, and they sent me their notes daily. So I was doing law school correspondence from an apartment in Ukraine for a few weeks, and it actually worked out. Wow. So yeah, then finished law school, couple years as a federal drug prosecutor in Brampton, kind of baptism by fire, I have to say. And then in, I guess, August of 2014, I joined a small boutique law firm. It specializes, it just actually does criminal law, and I've been doing that ever since. Why did I go into politics? Well, you know, I just felt like somebody had to stand up. I guess for me, the tipping point was the vaccine mandates. And so many friends, family that I knew suddenly were having to choose between keeping their jobs or getting the jab, seeing a loved one in a nursing home or getting the jab. There was just so much that was, I found very upsetting. And I thought, look, somebody needs to stand up. Why not me? I heard about the Ontario Party. I knew that they were looking for candidates. I expressed an interest. They did end up choosing me to be their candidate in Oxford, where I live. Actually, it's fortunate I live really right in the center of the riding, so that works out nicely. And I have to say, I'm so impressed with the Ontario Party. I find it very, very comfortable to be a candidate for them, because I genuinely, honestly agree with everything that they stand for. They haven't taken a position yet that hasn't very much reflected my own thinking on the issue. So I always thought that I wouldn't go into politics, frankly, because I thought I'd have to join a party that I'd have to compromise with, probably that I might agree with 80% and just, bite my tongue when it came to the other 20%. And I didn't really want to do that. And touch wood, that has not happened with the Ontario Party. I feel like if I was going to start a party, this is what I would do. So that's how things have developed.
Very good.
Yes.
Interesting. So this is a tongue-in-cheek comment, but Kathleen has to tell me to behave myself at times. But you said you left the music, being a professional musician, to get a real job. Now you're contemplating leaving the law profession to go into politics. Is that not a backward step? Yes, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
But anyway,
and I've had lawyers. Yeah, I've had lawyers tell me that being a lawyer isn't a real job. So I guess
yes,
it's a
I've
bit of
heard
a loose
that.
term.
I've heard that criticism. I've heard people say farming is the only honest job. I don't know. Anyway, this is we're trying to be a little serious here. I just wanted to throw in, we have an international audience. So for those of you listening to this in a week or two's time or longer from other parts of the world, when we talk about provinces and provincial elections in our country of Canada, it's somewhat similar to the state system in the United States of America, where they have state elections and governors. We have premiers, not governors, but there's some parallels. It's a more independent type of structure than the county system in Europe, as far as I know. I just want to give, am I right on saying that, Karl?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to help people understand it, for sure.
Sure, because I certainly didn't understand it when I came from the British system of very limited local government and fairly strong central national government. It took me a while to get used to how it works in North America, certainly. So you've told us that you moved. So how old were you when you moved from Manitoba? Were you an adult then, or?
Well, yeah, so I didn't go directly from Manitoba to Ontario. There was a lot of places in between, even though they are neighboring provinces in Canada. Mm-hmm. So I completed my bachelor's music degree in Manitoba, Brandon University. Then I went to Northwest University, which is near Chicago, a couple of years there, then to Los Angeles, 3 years, University of Southern California. Miss the weather, have to say. I don't miss the traffic. Don't miss the earthquakes, actually. Yeah. Then back to Manitoba for a year, sort of at loose ends, trying to figure out what would come next. Got a job in Bergen, Norway, in the orchestra there. Actually 2 years there, 1 year in Tromsø, Norway, in a string quartet, north of the Arctic Circle. Wow. And then, missed Canada, wanted to come home, knew a number of musicians in Toronto, said, you can come and relocate to Toronto, and the freelance situation is pretty good. Had an audition with Toronto Symphony, February 98. That's right, February 98, went well, and was on their substitute player list for, I guess, about 12 years.
Wow.
Interesting.
Back to you, Kathleen.
Thanks, Peter. And getting back to talking about the Ontario Party, you said that it really resonated with you, but can we delve, maybe just do a deeper dive into some of the main elements of the Ontario Party's platform that you believe will be good for Ontario and by extension, the rest of Canada? Sure.
Well, the Ontario Party is really taking a very hard stance against vaccine mandates. Mm-hmm. That's what first drew me to them, I should say. Faith, freedom, and family are their sort of three words that jump out on their website and in their in all of their media and material. In Ontario, we have a very, very radical sex education program in our schools, which the Ontario Party very much is against. We believe that this sex education program is very harmful for our children. We believe it exposes them to sexually explicit material and misleading ideas about gender. It confuses them, it misleads them, it harms them. We're very much against that. There's also something in Ontario now, it's called Bill 67. It's being supported by all of the major parties in Ontario. It seeks to impose and mandate critical race theory in our schools. We're very much against critical race theory. We think it's misguided. We disagree with it. And we're adamantly opposed to it. So education is a big part of what the Ontario Party is all about. In terms of freedom, I guess this gets back to the vaccine mandates, but it also involves, we had a massive protest in Ottawa for several weeks in February. It's called the Freedom Convoy. I think it made news around the world. I'm sure your listeners, your watchers around the world would be familiar with it. The way both the federal government in Canada and the provincial government in Ontario handled that situation was shameful in our view. It was a remarkable, peaceful protest in spite of media reports to the contrary. I went on the third weekend. I witnessed how beautiful it was. I witnessed how peaceful it was. Part of the reason I went was because I wanted to see if these media reports about it being violent and ugly had any merit to them. And it was apparent to me within a few minutes that those reports absolutely did not. I spoke with a police officer who was just sort of present there, had actually a couple of very nice conversations with police officers there. And he said, this protest has been massive. It's been going on for 3 weeks. There hasn't been one broken window. He said, where else would this happen other than Canada? And you could hear the pride in his voice as he was saying that. So the way, I'm sure many of your viewers will be familiar with how that protest was just taken apart and taken down through pure thuggery, in my view. And again, freedom being one of the, it's a fundamental issue, I think, for everyone, but it's certainly, when the Ontario Party says it stands for freedom, specifically, that's what it's saying. It's just fundamentally opposed to what happened in Ottawa, and it makes these, we'll call them the legacy parties in Canada, that seem to think that what happened in terms of taking down the protests in Ottawa, they seem to think all of that was okay. Well, it wasn't, and in my view, it makes voting for them impossible going forward.
Right, and might I add, I heard that the crime rate, in fact, in Ottawa went down over the course of those 3 weeks.
There was a lot of food, right? People were making food all over the place. So the homeless, I don't think the homeless in Ottawa ever ate better, right? And they had, there was just so much. They had garbage bags taped onto the sort of street lamps so that all the garbage was, put away properly. It was just a lovely atmosphere. I'm really glad I experienced it firsthand. I'll never forget it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in fact, we had a member of Action for Canada. The local chapter was down there twice, I think, the first and third weekend as well. And we had her on the show soon after she came back. And so we have that on record, that interview as well. So I'm getting back to your launch into politics. This is a two-part question. There's another, call it new right-wing Christian-based political party in Ontario that started a little earlier than yours and has probably got more resources and a better infrastructure than you guys have right at the moment. So the first part of my question is, did you consider joining them at all to get a better head start?
To be honest, I didn't hear of them until I'd already applied to be a candidate with the Ontario Party. I hadn't even done my interview as a candidate yet, though I suppose I could have easily looked more towards the New Blue. for people, well, first of all, I do think it's unfortunate that the New Blue and the Ontario Party are vying for the same space in the political landscape right now. There's no question we're vying for the same space. I think we agree 100% that the so-called conservative government that's currently in power in Ontario is sort of a counterfeit conservative government that has moved so far left. I mean, politically, they've been very strategic. They've been very smart. They've taken over the center. They know that there's no substantial opposition to the right of them, and they know that they can win elections this way. So we're in this place where the political or the how can I put it? The political landscape in Ontario is very unbalanced. We've got a progressive conservative party that is in the center, in my view. We've got a liberal party that's to the left of them, an NDP party that's to the left of them. Correct. So we don't have anyone really standing up for the right, except these two parties that are standing up for the right at the same time.
Yes.
So,
I know.
which is unfortunate. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Peter.
No, the second part of my question was, given the mood, as I think I read it, and as I'm sure you read it, otherwise you wouldn't be standing at the moment, should the two parties collectively be in a position to unseat the Ford Conservative Party government in Ontario, do you believe at that point they would be able to form a coalition and form a government? Is there a strong possibility of that, do you think?
Yeah, I can tell you that within the party, that at least that I'm aware of, within the Ontario Party, there hasn't been any talk of that, but that makes sense to me. Sure. If I think it's got to be about serving the people of Ontario, and I do think that the current progressive conservative government that's in power has got to go. And if we can get them out by forming a coalition, I say let's do it. And I'd like to say there's probably a lot of people watching and listening to this that are sort of vacillating, can't make up their mind between the Ontario Party and the New Blue. I agree with you, Peter, that the New Blue does have the jump on us. They've got more candidates. They're likely better funded. They have been out in front of us in terms of getting going on their campaigns. I would very much ask people that are having trouble making up their mind to keep an open mind. I do think that one of the parties will come to the fore in the next few weeks and make the decision a little bit more clear for people. That's my prediction. No,
that's good to hear. I tend to agree with you as well. And we've got several weeks still. What have we got? 2.5 months before the election, right? So
I looked at it today. I've got 6 weeks from this Thursday.
6 weeks from this Thursday. Wow. And sorry, Kathleen, I'm monopolizing Karl here, but before I forget, I had the privilege of hearing Karl speak last week on Wednesday, and Karl was saying that he's really started from zero to get his organization going and his campaign going. So you got quite a job in front of you.
I never appreciated how much of an advantage the legacy parties have in all of this. Just yesterday, I've been struggling to get a website set up. I had a friend who said he could do it, who I thought could do it. He called me yesterday, said, sorry, can't do it, just don't have the knowledge. So I was scrambling to get a website set up, not for the party. They have actually a very nice website, but sure, apparently I should have my own website. So there's just a lot of things. The analogy that comes to mind is I feel like I'm having to build a car and I have a team helping me, but it's like we've got to build this car, and when the writ drops, when the election's called, the car's got to be ready to go. Right. The legacy parties, their cars sitting in the garage, and they're nice cars, and look, they've got to do their prep too. It's not like the campaign just falls out of their computers. But it's a lot of work to get this all up and running. It really is. I didn't appreciate it before.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. Kathleen, you had something you wanted to ask Karl.
Yes, Karl, do you believe that the Ontario Party will have a good level of support in the urban areas, or is this mostly rural-based support?
Look, I think the issues that are really going to grab people are the vaccine mandates and the Ottawa trucker convoy protest. I think those are the ones that are going to grab people first. I don't see those as being exclusively rural, certainly. I think there's a lot of people in the urban areas that are going to feel very strongly. I don't know what the internal polling is, or I assume there's some internal polling that somebody's doing. I wouldn't be surprised if we're stronger in the rural areas, but I do think we're going to have a lot of support in the urban areas as well.
I'm going to throw in that you were talking about the sex education problem at schools. From the context that I have and conversations I've been listening to, a lot of fairly liberal and probably historical Liberal Party supporters are equally concerned about this whole school thing as you and I are, and could well vote for a Conservative Party purely for that. So it could be some surprising switches there. Yeah.
And just to pick up on your term Conservative Party, Peter, just so people aren't confused, because the ruling government in Ontario is the so-called Progressive Conservative Party, and they are very much responsible and in favor for this radical sex education program. So I guess we're using small c conservative, not large c conservative. I
should have put in a qualifier there. So thanks for clarifying that, Karl. Yeah, God forbid that I was supporting the wrong type of conservatives. So here's another one. You touched on the convoy and the handling of it a little earlier. I believe that the government's handling of both the virus problem with all its associated mandates and the brutal disruption of the convoy has driven a wedge into Canadian society like nothing else, certainly in my 18 years that I've lived in Canada. And we have a disunited country like never before. Do you think that if your party wins or can lead a coalition and bring some sanity back to provincial politics, do you think that that will help heal this divide and maybe, again, by extension, be good for the rest of Canada?
I do. Look, our party is very much, we put a very strong emphasis on faith and the importance of faith. It seems to me that the divide amongst people, I've never seen anything like it. My family's divided, let alone the workplace and the schools. It's the most divisive thing I've ever seen in my life. It's going to take years to heal. There's no magic bullet that's going to fix this. It seems to me that we need to really emphasize forgiveness. We need to emphasize mercy. We need to emphasize understanding. We need to get back to respecting people's right to conscience, to people's right to bodily autonomy. We certainly, and I don't think this is really even a concern, at least it's not a concern for me. It's not about getting everybody to join a specific religion or saying you have to ascribe to a specific faith. It's not that. It's a respect for freedom. It's, when I grew up in Canada, I always felt like I lived in probably the most free and the most prosperous country in the world, or at least one of them. I can tell you, I'm 55, so I was born in 66. I guess I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s, coming of age. And I sort of took it for granted that my parents' generation would leave a country to me that was as good or better than what they had. And I worry very much that mine is going to be the generation where that changes, and we're handing something off to our children that's just not the same. That's just not nearly as free. That's not nearly as prosperous. So that's a big part of the reason why I got into this. That's a big worry of mine. I feel like I'm in danger of letting my kids down in a really significant way. We've got a lot of healing to do. We've got a lot of work to do, but mercy, forgiveness, faith, I'll throw in respect for life. That's a very, very important part of why I'm running. It seems to me when there's just so much that flows from not properly respecting the sanctity of life. When life becomes less valuable, we all lose in various ways.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. I just picking up on what you said. Sorry, Kathleen, I'm jumping in while it's fresh in my mind. For international viewers as well, who may not have seen a lot of coverage of our convoy, we had many people there who were A, not white, and B, were not necessarily Christian. And I can remember some Sikh truck drivers being interviewed, and they were supporting the convoy for exactly the same reasons Christians, Muslims, and everybody else was supporting the convoy, right? Because they wanted freedom to practice their faith, they wanted law and order, and they wanted what everybody else wants. So when we talk faith, as Karl's just said, we don't expect everyone to become Christian overnight at all. But people of faith tend to, whatever that faith, tend to have the sort of values we're talking about, right? And that respect for life. Thanks, Karl. Sorry, I needed to throw that in for our international audience. Back to you, Kathleen.
Well, Peter, I'm just looking at the time. It looks like
we're getting there.
Short on time. So, Karl, how do people get a hold of you?
Oh, thank you, guys. Probably the best way, well, I'll give you my cell number. I don't know how wise this is, but I've been giving out my personal cell number just because it seems to be the easiest way. 226-883-0575. If I don't pick up, leave a message, I'll get back to you. Or actually, I've had some very lovely text exchanges with people in the last few days as well, so feel free to text. And I have a specific email account for the campaign, Karl, K-A-R-L, Karl with the Ontario Party @gmail.com. I'll spell it out. KarlWithTheOntarioParty @gmail.com. I hope I didn't mess that up. Karl with the Ontario Party @gmail.com.
I got that. And Karl, you got 30 seconds or maybe closer to a minute. What do you need in the way of support? For, we have people, a lot of people in Ontario will listen to the show. So if someone's listening over the next week or two and they want to give you a hand, they want to get involved, what sort of people are you looking for?
Yeah, well, look, I need three things. I need donations, I need volunteers, I need prayers. All right. So if you're able to make a donation, it would be very, very welcome. Perhaps just contact me at the cell number or the email address that I've just given out. I can tell you, I'll put in a little plug. We're going to be having an event at the Drumbo truck stop just off the 401, April 29th, starting at 6 p.m. It's basically going to be a freedom rally. We're encouraging people to bring their trucks, their cars, their bikes. The kids can bring their tricycles if they want. We're going to have a contest for the best freedom decorated vehicle. We'll put them into categories. Derek Sloan, our Ontario Party leader, will be there. He's going to be apparently the judge. I think he and I are going to be the judges. Not that we have any expertise in this, but we'll have some fun. Yesterday, or no, I suppose it was Saturday, we purchased a machine so that we can take credit cards when people come up to us. Again, just another bit of infrastructure that we're building. But yeah, and if you can contact me if you're able to volunteer, goodness knows we could use your help. And lastly, I'll ask for your prayers. Perhaps that's the most important thing. We've got an uphill battle. This is a David and Goliath kind of situation. So thanks very much for that opportunity, Peter.
No, you are most welcome, and just wish you all the best of luck. A lot of us are depending on people like you to turn this around. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the show today, Karl. And once again, thank you all for tuning in. We love reading your comments, so please keep those coming. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye, everyone.